This is a great beginner project if you're new to the bowl gouge. Hi, I'm Kent and welcome to Turn a Wood Bowl. Now, if you've been intimidated by the bowl gouge, I completely understand. This is not the simplest tool to use right off the bat. This is not like a carbide scraper. This is much different and it has different techniques for cutting. I'm going to show you how to do that in this project. This is a great beginner project because you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. You're going to learn to use your bowl gouge properly, and we're going to use basic construction material to do it. That way you're not worried about making your bowl perfect or doing everything exactly right. And construction material is not very forgiving. You might be thinking, well, if it's not very forgiving, then why do we want to use it? Well, it's going to tell us when we're doing things improperly. Once you get the hang of cutting material like this, you can cut anything. So this is great material to practice with. It's cheap, it's readily available, and you will hone your skills. So let's jump over to the lathe and I'm going to show you what we're talking about.
Actually, before we go to the lathe, we're going to trim out some blanks here. And I'm going to use my square and just mark a 45-degree angle, and then that way I know that each of these blocks are absolutely square. Now I'm going to make several of these. I'm going to make several small ones and several large ones. I think I said this is a 2x8 or a 2x6, but I think this is actually a 2x8 here. This is much larger. It's not huge, but it's something that you can pick up at a local hardware store or a lumber yard. It'll be readily available. Now this piece is going to be our connecting plate, and I'm going to use a face plate to attach to this blank. What you want to do with the faceplate is you want to start one screw but don't tighten it, and then tighten the other one on the opposite side, all while looking down through the faceplate at that center point and keeping it nice and centered. And then go ahead and attach all of your screws, and then we'll get that mounted to the lathe. This is going to be our connecting point. Now we're going to go ahead and round this. And this is a great way to practice. We're going to do a simple push cut. You can see here how I'm not moving my hands or arms. I'm just shifting my body weight forward. I have the tool pointed or rotated in the direction of the cut. This is my 55-degree bevel swept back bowl gouge. This is a 5/8 inch bowl gouge. I have the nose pointed to the right, and I'm cutting from the left to the right. Now keep in mind, I'm not cutting on the back. I'm picking the tool out of the path and bringing it back over to the beginning and starting a new cut when I start on the left side. I need to keep cutting this until I'm down to a round surface. I've got some tear out there. I'm going to use the bottom wing there just to scrape off that tear out. But here you can see what this looks like from this angle. I'm basically just pushing forward by shifting my body weight. Again, I'm not pushing my hands or arms. I'm shifting my entire body and making sure that tool stays on the tool rest. Okay, I'm going to take one of my smaller blanks here and I'm going to apply some hot glue to this. Now, I got to be honest with you guys, I have never attached anything to the lathe with hot glue before, because my thinking is that there's no way in the world hot glue is actually going to work that well, and I'm kind of ready for this to come flying off the lathe. So I used quite a bit of glue, and I have it on the bottom of this blank, and that's not ideal here, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to mark where I'm going to be cutting, and I made 2 circles there. Just mark that off real quick. We have to come over here first because we're going to make a really tight little cut inside this. So I'm going to sharpen my bowl gouge. This is my 1/2 inch 55-degree bevel swept back bowl gouge. I'm going to sharpen up that bevel, but I'm going to do something here that's very important that we do, because we need to scoop out that small little bowl shape that's going to be in the center of this. So I need to reduce the heel on this bowl gouge as well. When I reduce that heel, I'm able to make a tighter, smaller curved cut cut with this same bowl gouge. If I have that great big thick bevel at the front of this, it's going to be hard to turn that tight corner. However, if the bevel is narrowed a bit by removing the heel, it will turn a tighter corner. There you can see how the heel has been reduced and the bevel is shorter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop out the inner circle, and that will be a bowl-like shape. Now these projects, this could be decorative, this could be something that's a bowl, it could be a small little holder, it could be like a ring holder. You can do all sorts of different things. What I want to share with you guys is how to do this, and then you can play and make these however you'd like. One of the things I'm doing when I'm starting that cut, hopefully you saw that, is I have right here, I have the gouge up at almost a 90-degree angle. That way it doesn't give you the kickback. We do not want that kickback. So we want this straight up, making the cut, and then as it goes in, you can open the flute. You can see how I opened it up there to about 45 degrees and then bring it back to closed in the bottom center. Now I'm going to use my round nose scraper here, and I'm going to just clean up some of those little tool marks. I've got my camera right at the end of the handle for the scraper. I was getting bumped around there a little bit. So you can see I'm just barely shaving with this. Now I don't use the round nose scraper for digging out an entire pass like this. This is just for cleaning up the surface material and taking out some tool marks. That's all you need to use this for here. And we'll take a look at that. And wow, look at that. The inside looks fantastic. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue cutting on the outside, and I'm going to use that other pencil line as a guide here. Whoops, I got a kickback there. That's because I had the gouge opened a little bit. Now I've got a video all about kickbacks. You might want to check that out. Take your time here. Now remember, the gouge needs to be pointing in the direction that you're cutting. In this case, we are cutting from the right to the left, so the gouge will be turned to the left as we're cutting. And go very, very slow and gradual here. This is tricky because you're cutting a lot of air on the outside there. And you can use a round nose scraper again to clean up some of those tool marks. Now I'm using the bottom wing of the gouge just to lightly scrape and curve the top section. And here, this is called a shear scrape. I have the handle downward and I have the flute facing the wood, and I'm just shaving the little high spots on the outside corner there. And now I'm going to go ahead and sand this up. You can sand the outside. It's going to be a little tricky. You can hold some sandpaper on the inside there just a little bit. And now, to get this off, I was surprised how well this glue worked. I had to chisel this off, and I used a little bit too much glue on this first one. But the hot glue holds really well. I got a little chip in the rim there. That's what I was saying about this not being super forgiving. So let's mount up another blank, and let's try something a little bit different here. On this mount, I'm going to just apply glue on the outside here, just at this joint. And again, my initial thinking is this is not going to be enough glue, and this is probably going to come flying off the lathe. Now I'm going to use a Jacob's chuck, which is basically like the drill chuck. A Jacob's chuck will go into the tailstock, and then you can mount a Forstner bit and cut a hole. Now you need to hold the Jacob's chuck as you're cutting this. And this is a great way to clear out the center area very quickly, especially if you're going to use it for something in particular. In this case, I'm going to use it with a votive candle. And I cut it to the same diameter as that candle. Now I'm going to mark where I'm going to cut the outside of this piece. And I'm going to start removing material. Again, I'm moving from right to left, so I have the gouge pointing in that direction. And I'm riding the bevel. So if you see the bevel, it is essentially parallel to the path that I'm cutting. Just take your time and shave this material away. Now this, what I was saying about not being forgiving is if you get aggressive with this and you try to do this very quickly, you're going to tear out a lot of material and it's going to look not so great. So take your time and make nice clean passes. Make sure you're riding the bevel. Make sure you've got a supported grain cut direction and just go very slowly and let the tool do the cutting. This kiln-dried pine or spruce is actually very beautiful. It's really nice to see it. When you do a turning like this, you get to see all those beautiful grains in there. Now, when you get out to the outside corners, you're not cutting solid wood anymore. You have air between those corners. So you need to go slow and make sure you're not pushing through that last part because you're going to have very little resistance because there's so much air. So the tendency is just to push through and just be done with that last little bit because it becomes easier when you're cutting. But the problem with that is you can knock off those corners. So you actually want to slow down and just make a nice, easy pass across those corners. Let your tool rest be your guide. So in other words, what I'm doing is I'm actually just pushing the bowl gouge across the tool rest in one particular path. I don't want that tool to be bouncing in or out towards or away from the cutting piece. I just want it to be one continuous pass across the tool rest. I'm taking my time here and getting that curve just the way I want it, and then I'm going to back out to this corner and then just lightly shave that corner. And this is what I'm talking about. Don't get too aggressive here. Just go nice and slow. And it's a weird feeling because you can barely see what you're cutting, but you're cutting there. Okay, so the glue just on the outside was plenty to hold this, and actually it was difficult to get off too. So the hot glue is actually surprisingly good for mounting a piece on the lathe. Okay, I'm going to use some Speedball. Whoops, I spilled some there. I'm using some black ink to apply a finish to this piece. It's kind of fun. Black is the ink itself is really neat how it looks on a lot of different woods, and the grain of this wood is actually perfect for this. It makes you see that grain a little bit better. It's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so we've done two small ones. Let's do a bigger one, and let's take this up a notch and do a couple different things with this one. I'm going to off-center this one. Why not? And I'm going to glue it on the outside like I just did the last one. And we're going to see what we can do with this. Now I'm going to mark where I'm going to be cutting. That's going to be the center or the bowl. And then I'm going to do some other paths out here in different shapes. Okay, the surface of this wood was not perfectly flat, so it was a little tricky to see some of those lines, so I darkened a few of them up. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the inside of this out like a bowl. Just kind of remove some of this material, then I'm going to start making these curved passes, cuts down into the bowl. Now this could be a decorative piece. As I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking I want this to look like an antique. I want this to look like something that's been around a long time. Maybe you're not quite sure what it is. Maybe it's a piece of molding off of a house or something. But I want this to be something that's a little bit unusual and has like an antique look. So I've got an interesting idea that I'm going to try with this one. We'll see how this turns out. So I'm going to continue turning this bowl shape here. And I'm actually pretty happy with the hot glue. I got to use the hot glue technique a little more often because that's a pretty neat little neat concept and how well it holds. Okay, now these other lines, I'm going to do some paths on here. So I'm doing a push cut in towards the headstock, and I'm following the first line here. I don't want to hit that bottom hard and overload the bowl gouge. If I hit that bottom, then the gouge is trying to cut on the left side and the right side, and it's going to overwhelm it. Same here. If you see, I stop right there because I don't want that gouge to hit the other side, and that's when you get a catch. So I'm cutting down. Now I'm cutting air in here too because I'm off the side of this blank because we're off center now. Just making a gradual push cut, and then I'm coming back from the other side and making a push cut going down. So I'm basically making like a V shape in here. Now, keep in mind, this is side grain mounted wood, and I'm using a bowl gouge. This is designed to cut material like this. Do not use a spindle gouge for this process because it is not designed to take bulk material away like this on a side grain mounted blank. Now I'm removing material here. It looks like nothing, and that's how it looks when I'm turning too, but I can feel it cutting that corner. So I'm taking this corner down. So we have a bowl in the center and then radiating lines that come out from around the bowl. This is a little bit tricky because it's hard, almost impossible to see what you're actually doing. All right, let's take a look. Oh, that's actually really cool. All right, I'm going to sand this up. I needed to sand that piece out because it's really tricky to get that one corner. I was basically just cutting that one corner. So it was mainly just air except for when that corner came by. So I'll take my time to sand this up a bit, but I want this to look like an antique. Like this might have been found like in an antique shop or something, and you might have to guess what it is. Like I said, maybe it's a piece of molding or something. So I want this thing to look really old, and there's a really cool way to do that. But I'm going to take my time here and sand this up a bit. Kind of ease up those corners too so they're not too sharp. That turned out really cool. Wow, this has got me thinking about all sorts of other things. Now, I'm going to get my milk paints out. Now, this is paint that's actually made with milk, and I forget what it is. It's like the lactic acid or something from milk. But this stuff has been around for hundreds of years, and it's super, super durable. This is what a lot of things were painted with back in the old days, and this stuff lasts. It essentially almost hardens once it's dry, and it's on. This is not like any paint that we have nowadays. And it's really cool as you can buy this. It's just a powder, and you blend it with water, and you're ready to use it as paint. Now I'm going to dry each layer as I do this. My thinking is that I will apply this base color of this green, and then I'll put some blue highlights on here, maybe some other color, and then I'm going to do a wash over the top of this. But this stuff actually builds up, so it's like a thick coat. I've got this rust, kind of like a rust or brick color, and I'm going to just play around here a bit and give you guys an idea of what's possible. I need all of this to be very dry. You don't want to apply new paint over wet paint. So you make sure it's good and dry. And I've got white here. And my thinking is that I will cover this with white, and then I will kind of scrape some of the white back and reveal these colors underneath. And it's looking okay. I'm questioning it. I don't do enough work with the milk paint to have this down perfectly yet, but this is actually, it's a fun practice to experiment with. Now I'm using a wire brush. This is a brass wire brush. And I'm going to try to scrape away some of that paint and make this look older. Yeah, some of it's chipping away, but you can see how durable it is. This has only been on there for a few minutes, and it looks like and acts like it's been on there for years. So now I'm using a heavy wire brush to kind of scratch it up a bit more. And it didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted. I didn't get the colors to come out from underneath the way I thought I would. So I've watered down some of the colors I have, and I'm going to reapply some of those. The benefit of that is it makes this look really cool and antique-y very quickly. This doesn't look like it's something new that we just turned or made. It looks like something you could have found in an antique shop. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some of these colors back in here. But again, I've diluted the paint here with water, so it's going on a lot lighter now. And I'm going to cover it with a thin coat of white. And again, I diluted this dramatically. And then I'm going to scratch it a little bit more with this wire brush. It's kind of fun. It makes me want to do a bunch more of these projects. I'm looking at that bowl and I'm like, yeah, it kind of looks all dingy and old and like it's been painted several times, which is fine. But I kind of want to see that bowl in there. So I'm going to go back and make one more pass and clean up that bowl area just so we see that raw wood in there and see what that looks like. Light passes here. I've got the flute open. I'm closing it there right when I get to the center, meaning I'm rotating to the right a bit, and it's at like a 90-degree angle to the right, or the 3 o'clock position. That is so cool. This is working out really well. So now I'm using my 7-in-1 tool, kind of scraping off that glue on the side and popping it off, and there's the piece. Look at that paint. I love that. It looks like it's 100 years old. Well, here are the 3 pieces that we've turned. This is a great beginner project, and these are awesome things to make as gifts or to have around the house, or just a great way to practice your bowl gouge skills.
This is a great beginner's project for a number of reasons. You need very little equipment. You don't need a 4-jaw chuck. You just need a faceplate. You saw how easy it was to attach these blanks to the piece of wood using just hot glue. And surprisingly enough, the hot glue holds very well, and you don't really want to use a ton of hot glue because you're just going to have a big mess afterwards. I was shocked how little glue actually held all these in place. So this is a great way to just experiment with the bowl gouge and practice your techniques and come up with some pretty cool little final projects. This little candle holder, and then the one where we scooped out as well, this little dish. And the best part is we're starting with very simple, inexpensive construction material. It's not hard to do. And I hope you've enjoyed this beginning project. Let me know if you're going to do this at home. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you're planning to do with this project. And while you're down there, click that like button and be sure you're subscribing if you're not already subscribing. Be sure to check out my website, turnawoodbowl.com. Over there, I've got everything you need to know about turning wood bowls, including online courses that you can start right now. So check it out, turnawoodbowl.com. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, until next time, happy turning.